I've got 3 low-cost farmhouse Christmas DIYs for you that are sure to impress. So let's get started. Welcome to Design to the Nines. I'm Natalie Callahan, and if this is the first time we're meeting, welcome to my channel. Today I am using up some scraps, a little bit of this, a little bit of that, some things new, some things old, but all of it super low cost, and we are going for the wow factor here. So let's get started with our first DIY. We are going to be building a Santa's Workshop North Pole farmhouse sign. Now this is something that I feel like we could switch out and use year round. So I'm really excited about this project because I think it has applications throughout the year. I have done many projects using these outdoor deck spindles. I just find them very versatile. The prices are really great and you can do a lot with them. So this one's actually just a little bit larger than the one I used a couple episodes, and it costs $3.18 at Lowe's. But we're gonna have to go outside and use a little bit of power tools to get the job done here. So if you've watched my channel before, you know I like to be powerful. I like to use power tools, and I like to empower other people who are a little nervous to use power tools to use them. So primarily we're going to be using a drill today on this. I'm going to show you just how much you can do with it, but I'm also going to be using a whole bunch of stuff out of my scrap wood. I like to keep the cutoffs for my projects because I can make pretty amazing things from those scraps. So rather than tossing them, I hang on to them, even though I probably don't have the space to hang on to them. If you don't have a scrap pile, go to construction sites, see if they'll let you pick up some of the scraps. You can find amazing stuff that way. Of course, this is a cutoff from our mini lanterns that we just made a couple of episodes ago. I'll put a link for that in the description box below. And this is a scrap from my giant lantern that I made last year. And so I'll link that one below because both of them are kind of on the Christmas theme as well. So I think that you might enjoy those episodes. So let's get started building this because it's not going to be hard at all. So you're going to take a drill, and then we're just going to need to get a bit, and we're going to stick that in, and I'm going to be using a 5/32 bit, and we're ready to go. I'm going to bring you in here and show you kind of what I'm doing a little bit closer. Okay, so we could run a screw all the way through like a longer one, but I decided to just use a dowel screw because I think it's going to work a little bit better. So what a dowel screw is, kind of self-explanatory. It kind of acts as a dowel, but it also screws in. So what we're going to do is we're going to put that there to connect these two, and we're also going to do that right there to connect the finial. Go away! Sorry about the plane. All right, real life TV here. We're gonna pre-drill a hole for center, and okay, so we've pre-drilled that, and I'm just gonna take this off real quick. And then how we're gonna put this in is we're gonna actually just put it right in our drill, like as if it were a bit, and then we're just gonna screw that right down. Got a little loose, but there you go, and it's on. Now that we've got that on, we can actually kind of mark where we want it. Put our drill bit back on, and we're gonna pre-drill a hole for this. Make sure it's right in the center. Okay, and then all we need to do now is twist that down into place until it's nice and tight. This might take just a second to do. Keep twisting until it's nice and tight. There we go. And make sure it's like straight. That is on there good, I can assure you. So we've got this on, and now before we put on the top finial, I want to put on the base so that we can just have that solid and standing up before I screw on the finials. So I've got these two pieces, and I'm going to use some wood glue to kind of connect it as we drill it in. So okay, this will just kind of help it stick together a bit. This is just some Gorilla Wood glue, and we're just gonna flip this over, and I'm simply gonna eyeball this. I know that might be crazy to some of you. This is farmhouse style, so it can be a little rustic. So to kind of hold these in place, I'm gonna add a couple of extra screws. So we're gonna use some shorter screws, and we're also gonna countersink because we don't want it to wobble on the bottom. we're gonna countersink the holes with a countersink bit. Take that off, take our regular bit, and we're just gonna add these just for security. Okay, so we've got our base built, and now we're gonna take our top piece and mark where we want it to be, and then we're gonna get some measurements just because this part should be exact. Now you can kind of see that I'm gonna be off-centering it a little bit because we want some of that weight to counterbalance what we've got going on up here. So we're not centering this. Okay, X marks the spot. This is where we want to pre-drill. Okay, we're gonna pre-drill this hole. Again, we want to countersink this so it doesn't make anything wobble. So this little countersinking bit is really handy, but in a pinch you can use a larger drill bit. Now we need to put on a regular bit. Okay, then you're gonna wanna take a 3-inch screw and put that down there, get it started. And then we are gonna attach this. We're gonna line this up. And actually, I'm gonna put on a little bit of wood glue just to kind of add to the sturdiness of it. Okay, here we go. That looks pretty good. It's really sturdy. Now we're gonna add the finial and the decorative brackets. How adorable is that? So now it's time to add our decorative finial, and this is basically the same process as we did attaching the arm earlier using the dowel screw. So we will mark the center of the finial and the center of the post, and we will pre-drill holes there. And then we will take the screw and put it into our drill just like as if it were a drill bit and screw it down into the post. And then we will hand screw the finial on top, nice and tight. Now, if you don't have an extra finial laying around, these are pretty easy to find at a craft store or at a home improvement store, and you should be able to find one for pretty inexpensive. Now, this is not the best camera angle, so my apologies for that. But next I attached the little bracket, which I picked up at Walmart for $3. I did this by first marking the holes and pre-drilling them, and then because of the weird angle of the bracket, I had to hand screw the screws into place. While this is decorative, it also adds stability. Next, it was time to add some eye hooks, which I pulled out of a Dollar Tree picture hanging kit. I laid down the sign from the Dollar Tree that I was going to be using to see where the holes needed to go. I marked those, and then I pre-drilled them with a very tiny bit, and then I screwed the eye hooks in for us to hang a sign from. I love this. Now we're making this for Christmas, but this is going to be versatile for any time of year. This is something that we can keep out year round and just switch out the sign. And now we're going to just spray paint it all black, and I'm using a flat black spray paint. It's got paint and primer in one. And then we've got a really awesome hanging sign stand that's totally farmhouse and so cute. So I'm excited. We need to quickly drill a couple of holes at the bottom of the sign because I have an arrow sign that I want to hang from the bottom of the top sign. I hope that makes sense. So we just line up these holes and mark them and pre-drill some holes that we might be able to attach some chain to before we head back inside. So today's episode is part of a collaboration that my good friend Heidi Soundbowl puts together called Friend Friday. And so how it works is we all do our DIYs in our episode, and then we send you on to another person. And you're gonna wanna stick with me to the very end because the person that I'm sending you on to is one of my favorite DIYers. And we will be giving away a gift card to the winner. And the only thing you have to do is go through the hop and leave a comment. It's just a fun little way for us to say thank you you for supporting our channels. Now let's finish out this adorable hanging sign. Both of the signs that I'm using are from the Dollar Tree and were already in my stash. I first start by taking the sticker off the back of the larger one by using a heat gun, which makes the process a lot easier. Then I do a quick sand down of the entire thing just to make sure I get any residue off. Then I take the arrow and paint the front and back of that rich black chalk paint. Then I paint the front and the back of the larger sign in 2 coats of white chalk paint. If you are curious about the larger sign dimensions, it is 8 inches by 12 inches. Then I used an SVG file that I bought off of Etsy, and I will link it below, for $1.59. Now I cut out the stencil using this SVG file, but if you don't have a vinyl cutting machine, you could still purchase the SVG file and print it out on your printer and use the technique where you place graphite paper underneath and trace it onto your sign, then fill it in with paint. I show this technique on my channel all of the time, so don't feel like you have to have a vinyl cutter to get this sign completed. You can do it that way. I used a combination of rich black chalk paint and celery chalk paint colors to two-tone the sign. And then for the arrow, I simply cut out the words "this way" and painted one side in the celery color that matches the larger sign. And I did a couple of coats of that. Then we remove our stencil. Now it's time to hang our sign, and I used one of the Dollar Tree planner hanging chains. These are pretty easy to come by, I have found, but it will depend on your store. I took the hooks up from the top of the chain and used that part to hang the top of the sign. And in the end, I used 3 links on the bottom to hang the arrow, even though I have more in this picture. And then I took one extra one and kind of opened it up and cut it in half and kind of created a loop to attach the arrow to on the bottom side, as you see me doing here. And then we are done. This has got to be one of my favorite Christmas DIYs ever, and maybe one of my favorite DIYs ever. I just love the idea of this and just how it ended up turning out. And please excuse the unfinished floors on either side of the fireplace. I just ordered the cabinets that are going into that section this morning, so I'm excited that will be coming up in a future episode. Now, I was able to get this done for about $12 using stuff from my stash, and that includes purchasing the SVG file and the stencil. Even if you had to buy some of these items, I still feel like you could get this done for well under $20, and for something that you can use year-round by simply switching out the sign and how cute it is, I think this is a good deal. I'm totally obsessed with this sign. What do you think? We are going to be making a North Pole sign, and I'm going to be using some scrap brick paneling that I have left over from my fireplace project. I have a whole bunch of these scrap pieces, and I thought it would make for a really cool art piece. But you could use any kind of scrap wood you want. Honestly, the image alone is really cool. First of all, we're going to go cut this down to the appropriate size. I don't want it quite this big, so I'm going to cut it down. Alright, so we have our brick panel the size we want it. Now we're going to add a frame on it, and I'm just going to be using some 1.5 inch wide poplar that you can get really inexpensively at the home improvement store. I'm going to be doing miter cuts on my miter saw over here, but if you don't have a miter saw, don't feel bad. You can use one of these simple miter boxes. They're very inexpensive, maybe $10 to $12, and you can do this by hand, especially with how thin this is, but you know I love my power tools, so we're gonna cut this on my miter saw. It makes a really nice clean cut, and then it also makes quick work of it. So let's get going. So I take my brick panel back inside and do a very intentional bad paint job. Just using some white chalk paint. The idea is the brick wall looks old, and I think we achieved that here. Then we paint our frame out in that same black chalk paint. Now we are going to attach our frame using E6000 and Gorilla Hot Glue using my Sure Bonder glue gun, which is cordless and totally awesome. Then we put our stencil of the image that I purchased for $3, and I will put that link in the description box below. Isn't it just the cutest image ever? I mean, seriously, it's so cute. Again, if you do not have a vinyl cutter, go ahead and buy the image and do the graphite paper technique to transfer the image onto your board. Now, I very carefully peel back the stencil and then kind of press it down into the creases as best I can. But we're not looking for perfection here because this is totally rustic farmhouse. Also, where I normally seal the edges of my stencils with the original paint color, since we are going for more of a rustic look, I just took a sponge stenciling brush and pounds in the celery colored chalk paint onto our stencil, and if a little leaks here and there, it's not a big deal. We want this sign to look like it's worn out over time. Then we remove the stencil and do any extra distressing we want with a little sandpaper. And that's it. Because I used a piece of scrap to make this sign, it only cost me about $5 to $6 to make, and that includes purchasing the image. Even if you had to buy the 12 by 24 inch piece of wood, you could find that for a few dollars and get this done for $8 to $10. But of course, I always recommend trying to get your hands on some free scrap wood. I am totally obsessed with the sign. It literally turned out even better than I had hoped for, but what do you think? Next up, we're going to be making a cookies for Santa tray, and we are going to be just using this scrap from my fireplace build. It's amazing what you can build with scrap wood. It really is. And I thought that we could just turn this into a cookies for Santa tray that you could use all during the holidays, but especially on that nice Christmas Eve night. I'm just going to start out by prefacing that this tray turned into the bane of my existence, but I learned so much from it that I can now share with you, and the end result I'm happy with. I start out by painting the entire board in white chalk paint. My first plan was to do an image transfer technique that you've seen me do many times on this channel using Liquitex Gel Matte Medium. This is actually normally a fantastic technique, and many of you have been asking me whether or not you can print this out on an inkjet printer at home. And honestly, I had never tried that before. I had always gone to Staples and used their self-serve LaserJet printer because I really love the print quality. So I wanted to try it out on this project since it was going to be just using black and white print anyway. Let me just tell you, this was a total fail. So the answer is yes, you need to print your image with a LaserJet printer if you are going to do this technique. If you do, then you will have a successful result doing the image transfer technique. But I was not so lucky this time. Normally how you would do this technique, you would do a thick layer of Liquitex Matte Gel Medium as you see me doing here, and then you lay your reversed image face down onto the gel medium while it's wet and smooth it out. Then you let it dry for a minimum of 2 hours or until it's fully dry. Then you're supposed to get a bowl of water and a soft cloth and remove the paper very gently and leave the image. This is where it went wrong for me. The ink should have been very saturated black and maybe slightly distressed, which is fine, but this literally took off chunks of the black and left a totally faded look everywhere else. So this was a fail. I like to share my fails with you just so that you can learn from them. And hey, this is real life DIYing. So I decided what I would do is just go over the faded look in a black paint pen, which I thought would work. This didn't work either. And I think a lot of the problems just ended up being from the gel matte medium, the residue that was still on the tray. While I was waiting for the paint pen to dry, I decided to proceed and do the French stripes on either side of the tray. Now you can see how I'm taping it off by watching me here, but I do a wider stripe followed by 2 smaller stripes on either side using some washi tape. And then I very carefully paint on red craft paint. Again, I'm going for more of a rustic look this time, so I did not do my normal striping technique that you've seen me do on here before. Once the paint was dried, I peeled back everything to reveal the stripes. I distressed the paint pen lettering and the stripes, and then I wiped it off with a wet rag, and it just totally made everything disappear, almost like I hadn't painted or done anything on the lettering, and it made a black smeary mess. At this point, I decided to sand everything down and use a stencil, and that's what I did in the end. Now, I did design this image, so I will provide a link to it in the description box below. Then I attached my handles. I get these at Hobby Lobby for 50% off for $3 a piece. Even though this ended up being kind of a headache for me, in the end I'm really happy with how it turned out, and I think it's an adorable place to put cookies or serve holiday treats and drinks. And the only expense I had really was the handles. The rest of everything I used was just supplies that I already had on hand. So even when you calculate a little bit of cost for that, in the end this cost me around $6.50 to complete. And I think it is so cute, so chic, so farmhouse. But what do you think? Now for the moment you've all been waiting for. The girl I am sending you to is one of my favorite DIY YouTubers of all time. So make sure you pop on over to her episode next. I have put her link in the description box below, so make sure you click on that. Don't forget to complete the hop and comment on all the videos for your chance to win. And to all of my DIY Niners, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you soon. Bye.